The Cleveland Guardians pick up a win, avoiding the sweep. And yes, I'll take Fry with that. What a fantastic day for the young catcher. We'll get into his performance and so many others on today's episode of Locked On Guardians.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I am Jeff Ellis. Justin is still in Jamaica on vacation. I retweeted a photo of him from there. He claims he's never coming back. Today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB, and they'll throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. I use mine daily. It's currently up in the fridge. Today's game, we saw Cleveland get out on top and stay there. They went out, got 5 runs in the first on David Fry's first career home run, a 3-run homer, no less, in this game. And overall, through the course of this game, he had a nice throw to third to throw out a runner that would have been, because the next guy up hit a single that would have scored a run. He did a good job blocking balls behind the plate. Now, I know his framing was not great in this one. And there was, was it Clase had to struck out, was a Carpenter twice. It was pretty unfortunate there. And there's another Cody Morris one. It was almost like he was a negative framer for whatever reason, that he just could not, that they were not calling Cleveland throughout this game. Cleveland was getting anything borderline was not going their way. And that's an issue with David Fry. He's basically in there because Cam Gallagher isn't feeling great, from what I understand. Took a ball off the mask and has not been as strong, as hasn't felt as good. So that's why we got David Fry in. And one could argue that he might have had a second home run. I listened to the Padres broadcast, and they said that second home run, or that his double, if I believe it was Grisham doesn't make that jump up and block it, that one would have gone out as well, that his wrist prevented a second home run for David Fry. What a day for him overall. As you're looking at this game, I think everyone but Gabby Arias and Josh Bell reached. Rough days for both of them. Josh Bell, 3 strikeouts and 4 plate appearances. I think every time he came up, there was a runner on base as well. He was 0 for 4 with runners in scoring position. Every time he came up, there was a runner in scoring position. Josh Bell, you think he's turning it around, and then the game like today, but they won. It's not dwell on that. Rough game for Gabby. I know the Gabby haters will come out. He hits righties well. He needs to play every day. This not playing for 2 days and then coming in, that just does not suit him. If he played more, and then, yes, rough throw from right field. Definitely kind of overthrew it, which allowed the second baseman to advance, which then led for that single on the infield. Credit to Kim for busting his tail down the line to score that second run. But remember, Gabby never played outfield until this year, and that's kind of the issue, right? In a game like this, you want Naylor to get some rest, and Gabby's your 4th outfielder. You don't have another outfield option. That's part of the reason, since Brendan started playing so well, that Gabby hasn't played as much, and he's learning on the fly. It'd be nice on this day, and Bell's played well in San Diego in this series, so you wanted him in. But you also don't want to bench Naylor, who probably needed a rest in the field, who was, I saw since, I'm trying to remember, San Diego had really arbitrary stats. Since May 28th, Cleveland has the best batting average in baseball. That's hard to believe, but that's what they said. Or I think since May 14th, Josh Naylor is hitting over 400. So I understand wanting to keep Naylor in this lineup. He came up with the big hit before the single. Bell comes up and strikes out. You're like, oh, great. You've walked the bases loaded. We've seen that occur. It was a hit for Ramirez, a hit for Jimenez, and hit for Ahmed. And I think Ramirez walked in that situation. Maybe it's all just singles, but I believe it was a walk. Bell strikes out. Naylor gets extends that hitting streak to, I believe, 15. And then Gabby, nothing. God, the worst was when there was runners on second and third, and He like essentially got it off the edge of the bat and it just died in front of the plate. And then Fry comes up and hits that big home run, and that's absolutely huge. Over the course of this game, they managed 14 hits. Just one walk, though, so that averages out typically to about 5 runs. They ended up with 8. They overperformed the run total. And I don't necessarily think it's because they had extra base hits, because they only had 4 of them, 3 doubles, 1 home run, only the 1 stolen base. They actually chained hits together. That's the important thing in this one. They actually were able to do that. On the other side of things, San Diego only had 9 hits, but they had 8 walks. They actually had 17 base runners. They had more base runners than Cleveland in this game. Their 17 base runners should result in about a little less than 6 runs. They got 6. So they got closer to average, even though they had just the 1 home run. It was funny that it was, again, walk home run, just like what we saw in the first, I believe, with Gary Sanchez, or was the second. It's the walks are killing this team. The same thing that happened with Bibee. 4 doubles on top of the 1 home run, so 5 extra base hits to Cleveland's 4. Logan Allen. That's 2 bad starts in a row. I think we are definitely going to see one of these young kids get sent down. Cal Quantrill threw a bullpen yesterday. He's going to throw another one on the 17th. He can be he was retroactively put on the disabled list to he's already been on. Today would have been his 15th day on. Like, he could have been activated today. So if you go back and you look at the Logan Allen starts, the Houston game last Friday where he gave up 5 runs and 6. Now, the first inning was rough, and then he came back to pitch well. They ended up winning one of the most dramatic games of the year, that 14-inning affair. Then this game was another 5 runs, but he didn't recover, and the command wasn't there. And that's been kind of an issue this week. I know the San Diego team has got 3 MVP candidates at the top of the lineup. That's a lot to deal with. And then Xander Bogaerts hitting 4th. Definitely a top-heavy lineup, but lots of walks in this series. And we've seen a lot more of command issues throughout. Sandlin comes in and does a really good job, even though he walks too. He pitches around danger. It doesn't make it pretty, but he is able to get out of the inning. We see Cody Morris's second debut. Again, he got squeezed a little bit, but the 2 Ks, he is going to, that's what he is going to do. He's going to strike out guys. He might be the new 99 in terms of high K rate on the team. And then, the unusualness here with Trevor Stephan and Emmanuel Clase. Stephan getting 5 outs and then Clase getting 4. I mean, they treat this like it was a playoff game with the way they ran those 2 guys out there. And since they hadn't been used in the other games in the series, it made logical sense. Yes, that did just fall over there. You are seeing that correctly. I'll fix it later. But those 2 combined for 3 innings. They went to their top 2 relievers for 3 innings, and they were great. They each allowed just 1 base runner via the walk. If I'm doing 3 stars for this one, I think it's got to be Naylor for timely hitting, continued streak, David Fry for the home run and throwing out a base runner, and some good blocking. And a double. He had half the extra base hits in this game. And then I think you give the last one to Jose Ramirez, who had an extra base hit, had 3 hits, and a walk, the only walk, and a stolen base, reaching base 4 out of 5 times. It was nice to see Ahmed had 3 hits. That's a good performance for him. Defensively, couldn't hold on to a baseball and then made a poor decision to throw to third. Again, the defense there is just such a net negative with him that he has to have 3 hits to balance it out. Jimenez, nice to see him have a multi-hit game. We talked about how Fry had a multi-hit game as well. So I do think your 3 stars in this one are Fry, Naylor, Ramirez. At least that's how I view it. You can let me know if you disagree in the comments below. This was a needed win because it's not getting any easier. We're going to come back and talk about this next upcoming series against the Arizona Diamondbacks. First, a quick word from our sponsor. And our first sponsor is the same one as our title sponsor, is the good people over at Birddogs. I've talked about how much I love my Birddog pants. They believe in their product so much, they sent every host in this network 2 pairs of shorts and the Yeti-style tumbler. Now, my tumbler I don't have on hand. I have shown it multiple times during the set of the show. because I do enjoy using it. I have not shown myself wearing the pants, but best practices says show yourself wearing your Birddogs. That's going to happen then. You're going to have to see me wearing Birddogs soon on here. I've shown the tumbler many times. I just like them. They are comfortable. They are any use possible. They look good. They feel good. You can wear them. I wore them as like a work short on days where it was kind of like, the fun Friday. I would wear it as, I fell asleep in them. You can do anything. Justin took them on his honeymoon. Birddogs are fantastic shorts. And go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't take your Birddogs off. We promise. Now, remind everyone to check out this upcoming Arizona series on SiriusXM. Just type Guardians into SiriusXM, and they will take you right to the game. So the Diamondbacks are on deck, and this is a team, the Arizona Diamondbacks, like everyone expected, who are leading the NL West. That's a very good team because that division is, listen, the Padres are now 2 games under 500 with their loss today. Giants are 4 games over after the struggles a year ago. The Dodgers are 8 games over. Diamondbacks are 13 games over. They've been one of the hottest teams in baseball through the course of this year. They were bad for a lot of years there, and they were able to build up a lot of talent, and the youth is coming through. And I was really, I'm not going to lie, I really sat there on the draft night when Corbin Carroll was sliding to them, and I was just like, could Corbin Carroll slide all the way to Cleveland? Like, are people going to get too focused on his height? Like, I thought he was a top 10 player in that class. I was kind of mystified by the teams that did not take him. And you go back in that class, I had him similar to Riley Green, who went 5th overall. CJ Abrams, I was very high on. I had him 6th. It's like, I don't know. Shea Langeliers, Josh Dung, Nick Lodolo, Hunter Bishop, Brett Batty, Keone Kavaka, Bryson Stott. Okay, I would have been okay with him there. Alek Manaea. This isn't a grand list. 16th in the Diamondbacks for only $3.7 million. If you're curious, Cleveland picked 24th, so he still need to get quite a bit down. But Corbin Carroll and George Kirby were the 2 guys who were in my top 10 prospects who kept sliding and sliding and sliding. And I kept hoping, and one went 20th and one went 16th. But Carroll has been a borderline MVP candidate in his first full season in the majors. Last year was a partial season, more 3.4 WAR. Perdomo has been fantastic at 2.3. Listen, I was hoping that Arizona wasn't going to be a real contender and they would consider trading Christian Walker in the offseason. Boy, how nice would he look with his plus defense, his 118 weighted runs created plus. I mean, even Lourdes Gurriel, who I thought was done, has been great for them this year. Ketel Marte is hitting. They promoted Dominic Fletcher, and he has stepped right up and in. Manuel Rivera. Evan Longoria has even found a little something left. They could use some help on the corners. Outside of Zach Gallen and Merrill Kelly, they did sign Andrew Chafin late, and he's been pretty solid for him. Ryan Nelson is an okay number 3. And Zach Davies is passable as a 5. The pitching is an issue. That's what's going to hold him back. But the one thing that stands out in this series is, okay, so you start with, let's go through Zach Gallen, Tristan McKenzie. Okay, that's advantage Arizona. Tommy Henry, Shane Bieber, that should be advantage Cleveland. Zach Davies, Tanner Bybee, that should be advantage Cleveland. But if we did the old compare position by position production, it's like catcher. Well, Carson, it doesn't matter. They win. Cleveland's catching is so bad. First base, advantage them. Christian Walker has been, Josh Naylor's been amazing of late. Christian Walker has been amazing most of the year. Like, it's tight, but that's still advantage them. Second base, Ketel Marte has been better than Andres Gimenez this year. Shortstop, Perdomo, I talked about, has been a revelation for them this year. Might be an all-star. Third base, Cleveland finally gets a position with Rivera versus Jose. Go to the outfield, and Corbin Carroll in left field, advantage them. Center field, Jake McCarthy has not been as strong for them this year. And they've been, I really liked Alec Thomas. It has not worked for him. I think anyone who listens to this show knows how much I liked Alec Thomas. Jake McCarthy has been a mediocre defender and has had pretty poor offense. It's pretty much a push in center field with Cleveland with Miles Straw, which is, again, why Miles Straw has a weird value, because center field is really hard to find in baseball. And then in right field with, I believe Pavin Smith's been their everyday guy, and he hasn't been great either. 86 weighted runs created plus. I would say that Brennan has been better of late. So Cleveland gets 2 positional wins and a push. DH wise, that is, let's see, their DH is Gurriel, who's been really strong this year. And if you're comparing that versus Josh Bell, the typical DH, that's advantage to them. So Arizona has a massive advantage in all of these games. And it's, they also are home for it, which is another big advantage. And I just can't help but feel that this could be a very ugly weekend for Cleveland, which is why getting that win today was so important. We're going to talk more about Arizona in segment 3 when we discuss potential, finish off the loop of the Shane Bieber trade ideas. As promised, we kind of balance those out over the course of the show, over the week, I should say. But the interesting thing is, I'm very curious to see if this Arizona team decides to go all in or not. And if they do, they have a 2.5 game lead. They have a very good chance at the playoffs in general right now, which is, again, amazing because their bullpen has not been all that strong. Their pitching hasn't been all that strong. The offense has been really good, but does have some places they could look to improve. That Gabriel Moreno was their big trade piece, and listen, I would love a guy with a plus defensive rating and an 83 weighted runs created plus. Moreno's been solid, but you don't trade Dalton Varsho for solid, especially because then they replaced Varsho with McCarthy, and that's been a massive disappointment. So, yeah, that trade has ended up being a big negative overall for them right now, just because, Moreno is passable when healthy, but I believe he's had some health issues. So they've had to go back to Carson Kelly, who, is who they had already. So they did a big downgrade at one position so they could then go out and, Moreno, no, he's healthy. He just only played 3 games last week. Carson Kelly was on the injured list, and he's played the majority of games since he came back. So that's not what you go out and make that trade for. So you can then have Moreno be a part-timer with the guy you were looking to improve. So it's kind of amazing. They cut Madison Bumgarner, lean fully in with this youth movement. You look at a lot of these players, it's like, Zach Gallen was that trade years ago, but and Merrill Kelly was a free agent signing. Davies was a free agent signing. Guys like Ryan Nelson, Tommy Henry, those are internal. They've done better with some of those internal players. Andrew Chafin, I believe, was originally a Diamondback. That's where he started out. So it was coming back home for him. Dre Jamison, another guy in that pen. Kyle Nelson has been a really strong reliever for them. Former Guardian. It's kind of someone fun to look at or keep in mind when it comes to this team. It's going to be a tough weekend. I just don't see a way it isn't. Arizona is playing very well. They don't seem to be making a lot of mistakes. It is a strong offense. It is a good chance, I would say, to get to know Corbin Carroll, who looks like one of the bright young stars in the game, and kind of enjoy that experience. See Zach Gallen, who is a fantastic story. I really liked him coming out of UNC. I thought he was an absolute steal. And, he's is he even 6 feet? He's 6'2". He's really small. Just this guy who should not be successful and just manages. Right now he's a leading Cy Young candidate. So it's a fun team when they're not facing your team. But we're going to talk more Arizona after the break. But first, we're going to have another little moment from our sponsors. And that fantastic sponsor today is FanDuel. Make your way right now to FanDuel because new customers get a new sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's $2,500 back if your first bet doesn't win. As you know, it did not start out that high. This has gotten to be only a better deal from FanDuel.com. You know, they have great promotions every day. It's safe and secure. You get paid instantly when you go to FanDuel. They're an official sports betting partner of the MLB, of the NBA. There's no better place to bet all the playoff action. All the playoffs are done now. Than America's #1 sportsbook for all your baseball action. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA and Major League Baseball. Doing some new infographics there. I want to remind everyone to check out SiriusXM for this weekend series against the Diamondbacks. Like I said, it is a fun time. You want to see Corbin Carroll. So just type Guardians into your search engine and you'll be able to listen to all the games on SiriusXM. Okay, so on the previous few shows, we kind of boiled down the potential trade targets for Shane Bieber to 5 teams. And let's start with Arizona. And here's why Arizona... The one thing with Arizona is they could honestly probably use Bieber plus a reliever. And one of the things I heard on today's broadcast when I was listening to the other side is that Cleveland actually, for all of our struggles, they have the #2 bullpen ERA in baseball. So they still have bullpen pieces that you could trade or consider as well. So if you did a package, that might make even more sense for a team like Arizona. But when you're looking at them, it kind of comes down to you're not going to trade for Alec Thomas. He has been unable to establish a role for himself unless you see something you can fix. I don't see a pathway where that makes much sense. You know, you're not going to get, and I don't think Cleveland wants their centerpiece to be someone like Drew Jones. Drew Jones has already had a few health issues. They typically don't mind that before they acquire a guy, but they haven't gone for as many guys who, well, I mean, they go for ones who are like currently hurt, but maybe not repeated issues. And their centerpieces in almost every single trade have been, you know, in the upper minors. Like the last guy I can remember who was a centerpiece in the lower minors were Jason Knapp, who was a centerpiece in the Cliff Lee deal. It was not Carrasco, it was Knapp at the time. Or like Carlos Santana, who was just in high A at the time of that Casey Blake deal. All the recent ones has been more about not a big name. They don't like Drew Jones's. That's not what they're going for. They're not going for that guy who is at the center of a team or center of a piece. They want lesser pieces. So some interesting lesser pieces. I think one is Blake Walton, who, by the way, Arizona had multiple first rounders that year. And well, how did that work, actually? I'm sorry. They didn't. Well, this is how it worked. So Blake Walton was the 26th pick to the Diamondbacks and the 16th pick because I believe it was one of those years where there was enough teams that lost picks that Arizona's pick moved up to 26th in the second and from the competitive balance to that spot. So at 26, they took Blake Walton, which is right after Espino. I believe they were was Espino the first prep arm that year? That can't be right. That doesn't feel right to me. What everyone wants is dead air while I kind of look at the list. No, Quinn Prester was. So when Quinn Prester, Daniel Espino, Blake Walton. Walton's 6'5". I thought he actually made sense to Cleveland. He was young for his class. He was a quarterback, great athlete. One knock on him, he's actually played well as he's progressed through the Arizona system, is he's never added velocity. What does Cleveland do better than anyone? Help players find velocity. So Walton is a command control guy who is near the big leagues, a lefty. Has never really been dominant in the minors. You'd like to see more missed bats. The walk rates have been okay. This year in AAA has not gone well. But there's a lot of things in there that kind of remind me of a Cleveland type of pitcher. And you wonder what they could do if they got their hands on him, because Arizona's pitching development hasn't been spectacular. Like Trey Jamison, Brandon Pfaadt, Ryan Nelson have shown some degrees of improvement. But I don't know if it's enough to, you know, where it's going to push them into a position where those guys are going to, you know, if those guys were raring to go, they probably wouldn't need to consider trading for a starter. Now, the other interesting guys, Dominic Fletcher is down in AAA for them. When Dominic Fletcher was up for 25 games, let me make sure I get the right guy here. Yep. He had 85 plate appearances, a decent amount of plate appearances, right? 119 weighted runs created plus, 2.3 defensive value. He was worth nearly a win in those 22 games. 308 average, 349 on base, 472 slug. He's not going to ever be much of a power guy, but here's a guy who is playing well, who's had some good traits, who, was a 6th-round pick for them. He's 5'9", 185. I know, left-handed, exactly what all the fans want to hear me talking about. It's not necessarily a centerpiece, but it's a guy who's producing for them. That's kind of an interesting, second piece in the deal. If you can figure out what the main piece is. I want to point out AJ Vukovic. He is not at all the Guardians type. Wisconsin kid who was all-state basketball, all-state baseball, 70 raw power, has some swing and miss. If they wanted to go out and get a guy in AA who would immediately have the best raw power in their system, Vukovic is one to watch, but I don't know if he'd be their guy. And then Blaze Alexander, he had a bad senior year of high school. He had like 1st-round hype, ended up going in the 11th round, but got a huge bonus. Always had good tools, more power over hit. He's got a 198 weighted runs created plus, so it's only in 11 games. But if you go through his career in the minors, he's actually, when healthy, and that's kind of the big bugaboo for him, he's hit. He's always hit. 2022, last year in AA, 17 home runs in 88 games. So there's some power there with him. I don't know what the centerpiece is with Arizona. I think that makes them kind of the hard team to figure out exactly what you'd want, what could happen. Are they willing to trade one of those catchers? That'd be, they're not going to trade Moreno. I don't think so. I mean, I assume they're not after going to get him. He's only 23. But would they move Carson Kelly? Would they be willing to take on a lesser catcher? Like, that can make it a more interesting deal for Cleveland, who honestly need 2 new catchers, hopefully one of them being Bo Naylor. Moving on, I talked about the Mets before. Again, I think what you're going for there is I'm trying to get Kevin Parada out because I don't know if he can catch or not. What I do know is the guy can hit, and he's got power, and he plays a position that they're already set at because Francisco Alvarez has been fantastic since they've called him up. Mark Venidos in his time in the big leagues this year was not great. He's got the raw power. I've liked him at multiple points. If that's a great pick, he's having a fantastic season. Brett Beatty is down to an 89 runs created plus. Neither of them have really stepped up. I was hoping one of them would maybe hit well enough for the Mets. You're hoping the Mets get desperate, but the one thing at the Mets too is Alvarez is already up. It's Batty, it's Alex Ramirez is far away. Ronnie Mauricio, how much do you believe in him? And Cleveland need another infielder. Venidos hasn't got it together yet. I do like Jet Williams a lot, their other draft pick. But you're not going to trade for 2 draft picks. You need someone who can help sooner rather than later. And, they got Batty and Venidos up, but now they're really doing the job for them. So I don't know about the Mets. Baltimore's interesting because they're the one team where you could say pretty safely Bieber would probably be their number 1 if they went out and made a trade, if Cleveland decided to do that. I don't think you're getting Colton Cowser. I think he is too good at this point in time. He's just done everything. Jordan Westberg is a power over hit infielder. But I think there's a chance you could have him learn to play a spot in the outfield. You could have him spend some time at first on the infield. You could figure something out. And he has put up some pretty spectacular numbers in the minors. Heston Kjerstad is an interesting outfielder who has had health issues, but has hit well. Those 2 guys are both close, but neither of them, it's hard to see a permanent role with the way Ramon Urias is playing for them and all of their other guys. This is a team that everyone's playing Aaron Hicks went to Baltimore and all of a sudden found old Aaron Hicks. So they have that situation right now where they have great depth. Even though Montcastle and Mullins are hurt, they've just had, new guys step right in and excel. Gunnar Henderson's finally turning his corner. It would make sense to trade with them. If you can get Cowser, that's amazing. I just don't know if you can. If you have to settle for Westberg and Kjerstad and, maybe a lesser piece. I'm trying to remember the catcher I really liked for them earlier in the year. That I'm now having well, that stinks. I can't remember the catcher I really liked, though. I see Xavier Moore, the former Ohio State commit, is down there. And then they had some guys from last year's class, like Silas Ardone, who's a good defensive catcher, not much of a hitter. Max Wagner was kind of interesting. Dylan Beavers, Jude Fabian. I haven't really checked in on those guys since they were drafted, but it's like maybe you could get a recent draft pick as your third piece. Moving quickly, I'm going to lump the Angels and Texas together because here's the thing with both these teams. They're not great prospect fits with Cleveland. The Angels, yeah, it's inevitable to talk Joe Adell because if Joe Adell could be 80% of what we thought he could be, he would be everything Cleveland needs. He's hit incredibly well this year in AAA. That is a incredibly friendly hitter's environment. You look at his numbers and they're absolutely insane. And then you see like he's only got a 112. So he's got a 279 batting average, a 363 on base, a 584 slugging, a weighted runs created plus of 112. That's only 10% better than the league average. That's what it is. 18 home runs in 57 games. This guy, he's hit in the past, and I'm not going to get suckered in yet. If he can show himself to be above average, all of a sudden you have a chance. I mean, Edgar Cuero, the catcher, would be nice, especially with Logan O'Hoppe already being in place, and that he is you wouldn't even have to add him to the 40-man at the end of this year. It gives you some space there, and you could always try to get a secondary pick. And then Texas, Dustin Harris, another guy can't stay healthy, but like has a little bit of pop, has some run to his game. But what I think is fascinating with these two teams is if Cleveland is creative. Both these teams are picking relatively high. I think the Angels are 10 or 11, and I believe Texas is third. And this is how you get creative: is there's no rule that says Texas is fourth. I'm sorry, and the Angels are 11th. There's no rule that says anymore that you have to wait a year to trade a prospect, or you have to wait till the offseason. If you set up a trade for Shane Bieber before the draft, you could conceivably set up a trade with those teams. And why that could make sense. Let's say you're talking with the Texas Rangers and you like Matt Shaw. They like Matt Shaw. They're not in love with any of the guys on the board there. If Texas were to say, draft Matt Shaw for you, sign him massively under slot, then Texas still gets all their pool. So they can do what they did with Kumar Rocker last year, where they signed Kumar Rocker under slot, use that money to go get Brock Porter. So they can draft someone for you and then use the leftover pool money as a weapon for themselves. So they don't sell like the entire pick, just part of it. Or, maybe you can convince them to go out. If you're sitting there at 4, maybe you get lucky and, Wyatt Langford's there. And teams aren't as precious with players that are that far out. Now, they might be with someone who's that talented. And it may not make as much sense with Texas. But with the Angels at 11, I think it makes a lot of sense for an Angels team that's kind of desperate to get ahead to put a trade in place that then allows Cleveland to come in. And, maybe 11 is too high. Maybe it ends up being, a second round pick with either of those teams. But all of a sudden, if you're talking, Texas doesn't have their second. And I don't think actually Los Angeles does either. So you're probably talking about the first rounder, let's be honest. But it's just an idea that no one's really explored. I think it'd be something fun to look at and consider. I want to thank you all for listening, rating, and reviewing. Downloading it helps. Doing your part is part of the Locked On Guardians team. Our everydayers are a fantastic group. I appreciate you all, and go Guardians, go.